Okay. Lawyer shows his kids. What'd you watch?
Okay, as kids,
Well, anytime you want to talk about any period of your life that was meaningful, informative for lawyer shows.
I think the first one that I got really excited about was LA Law.
Hmm.
It was flashy, it was cool. Then when I was about in law school, I was in law school in the mid 90s. I
Okay.
loved Ally McBeal. And I actually feel embarrassed about that because I watch the show now with my kids and they seem like such just goofy airheads. But I enjoyed that. Um I was more into some of the movies like My Cousin Vinny. My
Oh,
Cousin
okay.
Vinny absolutely changed my life for the positive. My Cousin Vinny is like when you have a bad day and you eat ice cream.
Yeah.
That's my you know what I'm saying? That's my movie. Um and I loved to be on the serious side, I loved To Kill a Mockingbird. That
Sure.
was inspiring, both as a movie and as a book. So how about you?
Not as inspiring. Um, I watched. Oh God, what was it? With John Larroquette, Night Court.
Night Court
Night,
was funny.
Night Court was super funny, and it like poked fun at the legal industry.
Hmm.
And I think there's employment attorneys who like flip cases who practice a lot like John Larroquette. Like he would just go in, he wouldn't read the case notes. He would just be like, judge, come on. And it's like,
Yeah,
I know people like that.
I do
Right.
too. I know a lot of people like that, and I almost envy them, Vince.
I mean, the quality of life is amazing. I always joke on the channel, like, if you take a case, you settle for 20 grand in 2 hours, you've made 4 grand an hour in our
Yeah.
field. Like it's an amazing hourly rate. You've probably hurt that person, but if you don't care about that, and then I watched a lot of, I don't know if you ever watched it, Boston Legal.
I love Boston Legal.
So I think, and this is not flattering for me, but the Denny Crane character, who's very much
Which
portrayed
one
as
was that?
insane. What?
Which one was that?
That was the gentleman from Star Trek.
Okay, yeah,
I forget his name, but he played this guy who had like a slowly developing mental degenerative disease, but his entire career had been this very bombastic, like I'm gonna call a press conference, I'm gonna go big, and like clearly he's presented as a cautionary tale in the show, but being
yeah,
an idiot such as I am, I was like, yeah, why don't people just do that? Like, why? What if you don't like the way a case is going?
yeah.
Why don't you just do press? like,
Exactly.
like,
That's still the question.
yeah,
Honestly,
right. So like,
it's still the question.
judge is mean to you. Judge seems unfair. That's cool. How's the court of public opinion? Like,
Exactly.
and he used to walk around, and his whole firm hated him. But like, they would like try to like control him and keep him from doing crazy stuff, and he would just be like, Denny Crane, ha! He'd just be so excited. I was like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, he's not entirely wrong.
Is that
Maybe it's
William
not.
Shatner?
Yeah,
Is
William
that
Shatner.
William
Yeah,
Shatner? Yeah, that's who that
yeah,
was. Yeah.
yeah. And I just remember that, and I was like, well, I mean, that does seem effective. Like, I don't. That was
It
that.
is effective.
Yeah,
Or it certainly can be.
it
And
can
it's
be.
fun when you get under the other side's skin, so to speak.
We we had a. I guess I had a judge recently, who like made me come in on a case. I was not even working the case. He's like, get Vince in here. I was happy to go. I thought it was a nice social call. It was not. It was. I don't want to see any of this bullshit that you pull press conferences talking about cases on YouTube. I don't want any of this. And I'm like, I don't think you can tell me not to do that. I haven't, and I don't intend to on this particular case because I'll tell you right now, that gentleman over there is going to cut me a check, but cut my client a check. But I don't. I'm not. I'm not. I don't have to fight you on this because we're not going to do it. It's not the time. But you can't tell me. I mean, I guess you put a gag order. Are you gonna? Because I don't think you are. Like what?
No,
Like I don't think you can tell me to shut up. You know, but luckily I didn't have to make that argument. So I just like, yes, judge.
Yes,
Sure.
sir. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All
That's
right.
hilarious.
Imagine you are a baby lawyer. What would you want to hear from older, wiser attorneys, the owls, the older, wiser lawyers?
Really figure out what you want to do and then do it, and do it without fear. Or if you have fear, do it with bravery. But also, it's okay to spend a few years in big law so you can get your debts paid off. That doesn't make you a bad person. Take
Yeah.
everything that you get from that experience and understand that you're getting some of the best training and the most expensive training you could possibly get.
Yep.
Use it. I mean,
Yep.
that's basically it. How about you? What would you tell them?
I always get depressed because I see people in our field, and I'm very limited. I only have one area of practice. We have a small securities practice, but like I don't ever want the two to touch each other because and it's just like representing victims who like had their account churned or like whatever. But I don't like the employment attorneys learning other fields because I think you should like there's so much to learn and you're clearly capable of doing multiple areas, but I'm not. There's so much to learn in employment law that if I have free time to learn, I should be learning or thinking
Sure.
about employment law. Um, and that's just my limitation as a human being. I have the horsepower that I have. Um, but in our field, on the plaintiff side, I'll see people get a big check, and it does destroy them a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And there's just like no like it's almost like they got the NFL, they get the players like financial advisors early on to like help coach them like, hey, you've never had money like this. Like and I'm not saying these kids are making NFL money, but like frankly,
Mhm.
they're doing better than some NFL players. I think the minimum league minimum is like 450 or something like that.
Yes.
Um, I kind of wish there was something like that. Like, hey,
Yeah.
this is amazing. You had an amazing this. You really helped someone, and now you have a lot of money for you. Couple of things, you know, like,
Yeah.
um, you know how you weren't attractive before, you still aren't. But the opposite sex may fool you into thinking you are for a period of time if you use this money in certain ways. And maybe you shouldn't pay for attention or love because you
Yeah.
probably can't buy love. And drugs probably feel great. And you're under a lot of stress. And that respite from stress might feel amazing, but it's going to limit your career. It's going to shorten your career. And you are going to have to go do something else, like retail bankruptcy when you get kicked out of this field.
Yeah.
Like you're, and retail bankruptcy is a great industry. I'm not saying anything against it, but it's not going to make you money like employment law. So like when you're burnt out because you thought Coke was the answer and you could work
Oh
30 hours
no.
a day, and also you felt amazing and you were never afraid and you were never hurt when your clients were mean to you and you never worried about having 80 grand in a case that you might not win tomorrow because you were coked to the gills, right? Like,
Yeah.
that is a very short-term solution. That is, you know, and you, I just, all these attorneys, I suspect you see it too. I can, in my mind, list 10 to 20 human beings who were way better than me, way better.
Yeah. 100%.
And I was just a little more plotting, a little more like the oxen, a little like, you know, and they were like, oh my God, I got that, you know, these big cases and like wheeling Avenatti, right? The cautionary tale of our industry.
Yes.
Nobody, somebody, national stage, jail, boom, so fast, happened so fast, right? Not making any comments on what happened or anything like that. I'm just saying like that arc on a much smaller stage plays out over and over and over again.
It does.
And I wish there was a way, and I will say the male attorneys are much worse at this. I don't know what it is, but I see the male attorneys don't even make it 3 years a lot of the time. Like a lot of female attorneys in our industry, from my experience, they'll go defense side 5 years in because
Yes,
they get the
yes,
big check to do it. A lot of the male attorneys, I don't even know what they do anymore. Like they just get
that's sad.
destroyed. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't. Um, and it's easy to be like, oh, I just have more density of soul, so that's why I'm okay. But that's obviously not what it is. Just
yeah,
um, I knew people who did it, and I got to watch it, and I was like, okay, so that's how we destroy ourselves. Okay, you
yeah,
know, like
yeah. You know, Vince, it's funny that you mentioned that because when I was 12, I was a huge basketball fan, and I grew up in
yeah,
Maryland. So, and I still am a big fan. Well, when I was 12, Lenny Bias
hmm,
graduated, and he got drafted #1 by the Boston Celtics.
wow,
And I'll never forget when I got the news that he used coke and died. I mean, I was actually heartbroken. As you are when you're 12 and you're, looked up to hero dies. But I was also scared, and it's some of like the most scared I've ever been. And that was enough to keep me from ever using any of the hard drugs. I was just like, wait, I could use coke once and die. I no, I
yeah,
do not want that. So that helped. That saved me from getting into trouble.
yeah. My family had a lot of addiction issues, and I worked in
Likewise,
bars for a decade, so it was easy for me to steer clear.
yeah,
I can think of attorneys today who like, you work on a case with them, and then you get the win or whatever it is, and you go out and celebrate, and then the next day their paralegal is like, hey, you need to not expose my boss for what he did last night. And she's like, yeah, I went home. I don't know what your boss did last night. I went home, right? Like I
yes,
don't know. But it's such like a fascinating that they have like support staff out there running interference
yeah,
with the people on their side, right? Like it's just like, this is not sustainable, friend. This is
no,
not. You are helping people. You are a good and talented attorney, but you will not be tomorrow. Like this is not. It's horrible. Um. All right. You had an amazing thing that you told me about pilots.
yeah.
Would love to hear more.
We were
The viewers would love
talking.
to hear more.
Thank you. We were talking about one of the most important lessons that I've learned over the years, and I've learned it from my husband's industry. My husband's a pilot, and the neatest thing about pilots is that after there's been any kind of accident whatsoever, even if they didn't crash a plane, they just made a mistake and maybe they had an engine out or just tarp icing, whatever it is. They immediately come back in and tie the plane down, and then they go in and talk about it. And it's a culture of being not just willing to learn from your failures, but willing to share those with the people that the people that are in your profession, with the hope that you have a safe enough place to be able to talk about it and therefore learn from it. You learn from each other's mistakes, you learn from your own mistakes. And the focus is not on being the best pilot, it's being the safest pilot. And that's helped me a lot in my profession because there's no getting around the fact, Vince, that we fail a lot. The only way that you learn to be a good lawyer is by making mistakes. And that's another thing that I would probably tell the baby lawyers is don't be afraid to fail. It's just a part of our profession, and it's also the kind of culture that I've tried to grow here at my firm, which is okay, as soon as somebody messes something up, please come tell me so we can fix it.
Yeah.
And because there's no the mistake's done. It's you missed this, or you didn't do this, or you didn't serve this on this person. Let's fix it and let's learn from it. that's one of the most positive, and by the way, it's not like a loser thing. It's not like, oh, let's just forgive and get on. It doesn't matter that you made the mistake. No, mistakes suck. I make mistakes and I feel horrible, but it's a lot better if I focus on fixing the mistake. And so that's what I try to do for the people that work with me too, is okay, just tell me right away. Just be honest with me and let's put our heads together and fix it. And it's not that I never get mad at myself or at others, but to think that we don't make mistakes is stupid. And I also wish that the other professions like doctors, dentists, vets, etc., had more of a willingness to say, okay, we're not a perfect profession, we're made of humans. Let's try to be better. And how do you get better? Humble pie, man.
Humble pie. That's so fascinating. I really want to institute. I mean, we do something like that for younger associates, but there's no question once you get, I don't know, 5 years in the industry,
Yeah.
there's some level of like, you want to criticize me, and then you get these like weird caseless shouting matches of bruised egos and insecurity, and it's
Yes.
just like not effective. And part of
No.
that is we're also conflict oriented, right? And
Yeah.
and there's some jealousy, like, oh, if so and so embarrasses me in the caseless meeting, I'm not going to get the best cases anymore.
Yes.
And the best cases are how I make the most money. And it's,
Yes.
an issue like that. I try to tell the young associates it's not as good as the pilot thing, but because I think I want to figure out a way to institute that in our industry, or like within our firm at least. I try to tell them to fail small. So
I
like,
like that. Uh-huh.
we make so many decisions in a case. Even just if you have like 100 pieces of evidence, you're probably making 3 to 10
Yeah.
decisions about every piece, right? And it's like, well, there's the best decision, and there's a couple of good decisions, and there's a whole bunch of bad decisions.
That's true.
And you're probably not going to hit the best decision most of the time, at least not early on in your career. And if you're at a volume firm, like if you're a firm that runs like a pure contingency, each attorney's got more cases than they can really handle, which not our
Yes.
firm. I'm positive not your firm either. But the decision fatigue can lead you to make really bad decisions or rote decisions where you're like, oh, this, then that, this, then that. Like you don't even think about
Yeah.
it anymore. Right. And I guess what I point out is like, listen, if you can make a fairly good decision 51% of the time, you are beating general population. Like
That's awesome.
by a lot, human beings are terrible at decision making. Decision fatigue is something that we just don't think about at all. And if you can keep the mentality of, I've got a decision, I must think about it, you will.
That's awesome. And not to bring it back to my husband, but
Yeah.
he came home last night and we watched a movie and did all of our things that we do. And he said, had a moment today when I was flying. And I said, did you have an engine out or whatever? And he said, no, no, no. We were flying along and there was a lot of turbulence. And usually with the plane that I was flying, there's only turbulence if you're uncoordinated. Uncoordinated means you're like this,
Yeah.
instead of like flat and addressing the atmosphere in a stable manner. So, anyways, he looked around and he said, okay, we're turbulent. We're uncoordinated or feeling the rattle because we're turbulent, not because we're uncoordinated. And then he said he had a split second where he said, if the tail falls off, we're dead. And he said, is that weird that I thought that? I said, no. And then he said, well, I had a moment where I almost like thought about panicking. And then I said, no, you're not dead. You keep flying the plane until there's nothing left to fly anymore,
Yeah.
which is one of the main things that comes out of that receptivity to learning from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Is you also learn that as long as you're fighting and as long as you're trying to improve and trying to get better, it doesn't matter. Now, don't get me wrong. If you fail all the time, if
Sure.
every time you file a lawsuit, you do something wrong, you're not going to make it in the law. It's same thing with being a pilot. If you crash every time you go up, you're not going to be flying much longer.
Yeah.
But it's having enough confidence and enough, I guess, belief in yourself and from the people that you work for to be able to go out there and try and have the support. And like you said, Vince, that's brilliant. Fail small.
Well, I didn't. I don't think it's mine. I'm sure I stole it from somebody else. All right. We went a little bit long. I apologize. I love this conversation. If you're
I loved it
down,
too.
I would love to do this every month if you want to.
I'd
You'll
love
let me
to,
know.
Vince.
Okay.
Yep.
Tremendous. Um, anything you want to add to the viewers? Any call to action? Anywhere you want to point them? What do you want? They're all fans of employment law. We'll say that.
No, I'm just thanks for listening in, and please join us at Jarvis Law. I think our tag is not just another boring law firm,
Oh,
and we're trying to disrupt and do some good. But thank you so much for having me. This has
thank you
been
for coming.
delightful.
Thank you for coming. I had a really good time, and I got
Me too.
I have a lot of fun collaborations. This was super fun because most of the collaborations are not with plaintiff side attorneys. So it's always like being respectful of a defense side attorney or an in-house counsel, all of whom I love. We've had tremendous guests on the channel. But as you said, plaintiff attorneys are a different breed. And whenever we're talking to somebody who ain't us, right? Like it's just different. And you're like aware in the back of your head, if they're an attorney, like you do think less of me. I know you think less of me. Like, like there's an attorney. I'm not even gonna get it. Said a really horrific thing about me, but it was like basically the gist of the horrific thing he said was like, "Oh, his money's tainted." Like, I'm like,
Wow.
because I help people. Like what? Like what? Like what?
Yeah.
Tell me more about the taint on my money. Does it not spend? Does it not? Not that I'm so doing so great, but it's just like I'd love to hear what you think about my career. Like let's have a conversation about it. And this is a guy who will sit at a bar and let me buy a round for him. And you're just like, okay, buddy, ran for judge, didn't make it. Interesting. Guess you weren't as big as you thought. I don't know, but sorry. Anyway, I had so much fun.
Thanks again for
Awesome.
having me.
Thank you so much. Take care.